Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Indieheads podcast. I'm your host, Matty, a.k.a. at Monterey and Prince on Twitter. On this week's podcast, we have...
Ethan, at EON997 on Twitter.
At and Moser on Twitter.com, a professional monster hunter and semi-professional San Pellegrino drinker, baby.
Hi, I'm Dylan. I have a Twitter. That's it.
Oh, boy. So, apologies, folks. This is coming in way too damn late. But, you know, hey, it happens. Like I said on the last podcast, good scheduling and the Indieheads podcast, they never go together, and I don't think they ever will. But we're finally getting it done. The album of the year cast. It's been a long time coming. We're finally down to the top 5.
We're going to talk about everything now 5 times in a row.
No, but we will not be talking about 5 albums because if you forget, which I don't blame you because it has been 2 weeks, we're gonna go down to our top our 10 through 6 as this podcast is going to be focused on the top 5. Where number 10, King Cruel, The Ooze. Number 9, Fleet Foxes, Crack Up. Number 8, Sunkill Moon, Common as Light and Love, or Red Valleys of Blood. Number 7, Lomelda, Thanks. And number 6, The National, Sleep Well Beast. So that's part 1 of our top 10, and now we're getting to part 2. And coming in at number 5 is Julian Baker, Turn Out the Lights. Now, we're going to kick it off with Dylan, because Dylan is the Julian Baker stand around these parts, or on this current podcast, so I'm just going to let Dylan take it from here.
So, full disclosure, no one else, we had a big old group vote and collective vote on the list, and I'm the only one out of the 4 of us here that actually put Julian Baker on my year-end list, I think.
Okay, wow, receipts, like 5 minutes into the podcast, fucking ouch.
Yeah.
It's true,
so,
but...
It is true, but... So, like, just like full disclosure of just how, like, Julian Baker and her music have, like, been such a massive influence and impact on me in the past year or so, really just speaks to the quality of Baker as a songwriter and as a very empathetic musician. I put her on number 3 out of my top 10. I saw her last month being December, with Halfwave and Adam Torres, and the entire lineup was just absolutely incredible. But the actual record itself is just very haunting. It's very what you would expect from Julian if you heard Sprained Ankle. It's very personal. It's a whole lot about just mental illness and self-loathing and just a whole lot of bad, nasty stuff. It's got Julian's incredible vocal range. It's got her now with the backing of piano and violin, and it's just all around. I'm struggling to like really define and discuss this album, really just because it's hard for me to put into words what it actually means to me. It's really just a gut punch, an emotional wreckage that, you know, just from the very first minute into it until the final track is wall-to-wall just emotional wreckage for me. And it's incredibly heavy, which really feeds into, again, the power of Julian as a songwriter. You never get the feeling that anything that she's really talking about is too dramatic or too over the top, or really you can't really sympathize with in any way, because she does a fantastic job of finding that gray area of not only connecting with her specific audience, but doing so in a way that does feel personal, that does feel like she has been in these places and spots before, which she has been. She's openly talked about it in interviews and stuff. Yeah, so that's kind of my introduction to the album, I guess. Open it up for discussion, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I will say of the albums on the list, this is probably the one that I've listened to the least out of everything. But I will say, very solid album. One I'm going to try to get back to a bit more often, especially. Although I will say it's right now it's the winter, but it feels like fall more often than not. So, I feel like it's a good appropriate time. But yeah, I will say I haven't listened to Sprained Ankle either, but I will say I enjoyed the more acoustic tracks rather than the more like piano tracks on this album. So I feel like that's probably more what Sprained Ankle is, if I'm not wrong. But folks, I speaking of Turn Out the Bright Lights, hopefully. I promise I will get the Julian Baker podcast out soon because I do have the audio. I just got to get it done, and
Never
we gotta get content out. But yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say other than hey, it's good. But if you have more to say, Dylan, because I feel like you have the most thoughts on the album of everybody here, unless Ethan has some thoughts.
I can speak to the album a little bit personally. So yeah, I was a fan of Sprained Ankle. It wasn't like, I didn't think it was like rapturous as some people kind of claimed it to be, but like her strong suits as a songwriter and, her vocals are like obviously what sticks out so well on that project. And Turn Out the Lights definitely brings more of the same, but then I think that ends up being a problem for it, because for me, like by the end of Sour Breath, which is like right around halfway through the track listing, but not really halfway through like the length of the album, I think the whole thing is kind of run out of ideas, and like the back half, a little bit more than the back half, but those last couple, that last stretch of songs like really to me sound super samey and don't really add anything new. I do think the opening collection of tracks is really innovative within her discography. Like I love Over as an introduction that transitions directly into Appointments, which again is a fantastic song. Turn Out the Lights, again, also a fantastic song, even if the similarities in those two songs are immediately apparent as being very like slow tempo with a building rhythm, and then like a kind of, you reach the point where she's belting out and it's cool and it's empowering and it's very emotionally impacting, but then when that continues happening, it kind of loses a bit of its effect. I think the instrumentation is all very gorgeous across this thing. Piano is used wonderfully, and I have not seen her live, but from what I have been able to gather, she is an excellent guitar player. I think that's obvious on the record, but I've heard she's actually much more impressive in person, which I would still like to see. It's just that for me, this album is kind of spent early on, and as far as like subject and presentation go, I just feel like it meanders a little bit too much for me to enjoy. But I think perhaps taken individually, all of the songs are really, they're incredibly written, incredibly put together, and so I think like picking them out a la carte is maybe more enjoyable than listening to this as an album. But I'm still very impressed. I'm still a big Julian Baker fan. I just think that for me it's a little too much of the same. I hoped for a little bit more variety when I came into this thing.
Yeah, I think when it comes to Julian just kind of as someone that you can pick out of a crowd of other singer-songwriters, what really makes her stand out is not really her instrumentation or her experimental qualities, but really just her voice, which is, again, really kind of the defining characteristic of her music. I would agree that like it does feel sometimes maybe a little more bloated. It's 10 minutes longer than Sprained Ankle, and it's 2 tracks longer. So to have that kind of, and also again with sort of the samey aspects of just doing it with, the very bare bones guitar, piano, violin backing on some tracks, and that's pretty much it. It's still very sparse, and it still creates this atmosphere of very melancholy, sentimental kind of feelings. But really, just in the grand scheme of things, like it is, in my opinion, it is solely defined on how much you connect with the source material. how much you connect with their lyrics. And it's really, I think, what makes and breaks the record for a lot of people.
I'm aligned with that interpretation of it.
That is number 5, unless we have more to say. Number 5 on our list, Julian Baker, Turn Out the Lights. Let's get into number 4 on our list, and this one should not be shocking that it's on our list, because it's on every damn list. I just gave it away right there. Number 4 is Kendrick Lamar, Damn. And Kendrick Lamar, we all know him. He's like, if you guys watch the 2017 low effort review that I did of Damn, it's fucking Kendrick Lamar. What do you expect from him? He's gonna make a great album because he's fucking Kendrick Lamar, and that's what he was destined to do, is just make great album after great album. But I think Damn is a different one. It's different than his previous albums, where, Good Kid, Mad City and To Pimp a Butterfly, they're both very conceptual efforts. Like, he's really like, I have something to prove, and I'm gonna, try my hardest. Good Kid, Mad City, sort of a storyline of him basically, growing up in Compton and his youth, and sort of tying that back into his reality and being like, this is where I am now. Like, this is how I made it. And then on To Pimp a Butterfly, it's not as, there's not like a thorough storyline running through it, but there is this concept of where, he's sort of reading out this poem throughout the entire album. You're hearing little bits and pieces of it after, every song or so. And, the big reveal that he's reading a poem to none other than fucking Tupac Shakur, which, let's discuss this very quickly. If any other person did that, we would clown the shit out of them. Like, we would fucking hate them. But for whatever reason, Kendrick Lamar, just because he's so damn good, he can get away with it just so easily. And then, but Damn is a much different album, as it's sort of him kind of, in some ways, kind of returning to Good Kid, Mad City a little bit in the sound that it's obviously a bit more tailored for mainstream audiences, but there's no integrity lost whatsoever, as there's still plenty of songs here that are like, holy shit, like, is he really doing this right now? Like, there's some moments on this record that I think are better than anything on his previous 2 albums. Like, Beat Switch on DNA might be the best thing that he's ever done, or the best part of a song he's ever been on. It's just absolutely insane. And knowing that that the second half was basically a cappella, and then Mike Will basically had to make the beat around the a cappella, is just absolutely insane. Feel is one of his most emotional songs ever made. XXX, also a fucking insane track for somehow making a U2 feature work and work incredibly well. And there's the occasional, I guess, kind of duds. I don't like calling them duds, I still enjoy them, but stuff like God and Love a Little Bit are definitely like, okay, maybe you're trying a little too hard to appeal to a mainstream audience. Unlike, something like Loyalty, where it's a bit more effortless, where him and Rihanna just have great chemistry. And then another thing this album is Kendrick is he's on top of his game. He's been on top of his game for the past 5 years, essentially, where he hasn't lost a step. He's had changes in sound, but I'm not, anytime listening to this album going like, damn, Kendrick, he's losing it a little bit. It's like, no, he's still completely on top of his game. And God, he's just the best rapper alive right now. For me, there's no competition. He's just like the best at what he does. And does anyone else have any thoughts on Damn, to kind of open up the discussion a little bit?
Yeah. I love the album, of course. I think everyone here does. I would be surprised. I would be surprised if someone even listening to the podcast didn't. It's gotten universal acclaim, and for good reason. It's an incredible album. I'm a terrible person because I didn't get into Kendrick until I heard To Pimp a Butterfly. And that was the album that really turned me on to him, just because of production. So for me, I'm a bit bummed that he kind of goes back to a more pop-driven production. Generally, the thing that really hooks me about To Pimp a Butterfly, besides his incredible technique and lyrically and shown in his rapping, the instrumentals are just incredibly gorgeous and complex and dense. So that really hooked me into the album, and then the Kendrick's content lyrically and musically it revealed itself to me after a longer time, and kind of wasn't the initial hook for me. It was kind of it took me a while to really understand it. And this album does not have that for me. It has fantastic pop production, like "Humble" being the first single was a great choice, because that is such a catchy song, and the beat is just so much fun, and obviously the chorus is just a blast. It's not my favorite Kendrick album, but the fact it's still high on my list because it's Kendrick.
It's Kendrick.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
fucking Kendrick. Exactly. Like, I will say, like, him going more pop is not surprising after Pimp a Butterfly, as, like, I think it wasn't as, like, successful as he wanted it to be, because it really was, again, it was successful critically. Like, I mean, I would say, maybe excluding My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, probably the most acclaimed rap album of this decade so far, like, easily.
I think the thing about To Pimp a Butterfly was that I don't think anyone can look at that album and be like, this is not a towering achievement, and like, this is not worthwhile, and this is not impressive, but it does suffer the same problem that I think another album we're going to talk about later on this very podcast suffers, in that it is like such a cohesive project that is doing so many capital T things at once that it's hard to like consume it on its own and like look at it sort of in that way, other than just like, I am now going to listen to Pimp a Butterfly. I will see you in 79 minutes, in which I'm going to go on this odyssey across America and like debate all of these politics and inner self-doubt and this kind of self-reflection and stuff. I think that surrounds To Pimp a Butterfly in a way that I think makes it harder to appreciate for some people. I don't really have that problem as much. I was thinking about this earlier. I haven't listened to Pimp a Butterfly all the way through in a while, but it does have moments like King Kunta and Wesley's Theory and The Black of the Berry and that like I can just pick out and be like, fuck yes, Kendrick Lamar is just doing his thing.
And that is why I think the album is so incredible, is that it is this incredibly cohesive work, but there are these great singles. Like, King Kunta, oh my god, it fits so well into the album, but like as a single, just like blows you away the moment it starts from like the beat starts, and it's just that's what I think. Because I feel like I'm coming off really negative on this album, but it's this weird thing where you've put out one of the greatest albums of the century so far. And how do you follow it up? By putting out a damn good album, pun not intended.
Here's the thing, bad joke, but that also happened in 2012, basically. Kendrick was sitting on the same precipice of, like, you just put out Good Kid, Mad City, which is one of the best rap albums of all time, like, what the fuck are you gonna do? And then his answer was To Pimp a Butterfly, which I think, like, in all regards, is hard to deny as, like, one of the best ways you could follow up one of the best albums of all time. Yeah. And then that was, again, the question coming out of To Pimp a Butterfly. Is like, okay, seriously, what the hell does Kendrick Lamar do from here? The answer is, like, basically become the biggest rapper on earth, basically become the biggest recording artist on earth. Outside of, like, Beyonce, perhaps. I really think that's the one thing about Damn that has struck me so much, is, like, not even the album itself, but just, like, 2017 was the year of Kendrick Lamar. Like, he was inescapable as an artist. He was everywhere, and like it seemed like everyone at all times was listening to Damn. Basically, it was on the radio, it was in advertisements, it was in all of this stuff. It was just like this huge mass production thing. And when you look at something like To Pimp a Butterfly, it makes sense why that was not the album that put Kendrick on the map in terms of like pop appeal or mass appeal. And Good Kid, Mad City, I think he was still a little under the radar at that point. He wasn't indie by any means, but that wasn't the album that was going to blow up on pop radio outside of something like Backseat Freestyle, which is ironic enough because of the subject matter of that song and the delivery being entirely concetious. But then Untitled Unmastered, which I still think is better than Damn, was just too experimental and too weird to kind of do that. And so everyone loved Kendrick Lamar, but Damn was the kind of thing that people could rally around on a large scale and just be like, fuck yes, Kendrick Lamar. My problem with Damn, and I think it's kind of funny, like looking at the cover art where Kendrick is so front and center in that, is that in the music, I feel like Kendrick is the most distant personally he's ever been. And I get that a lot of that is because of the subject matter, where he's like directly confronting the country and the tumultuous political climate you may have heard about in 2017. But I think we lose some of the anecdotal stuff that made To Pimp a Butterfly, and especially Good Kid, Mad City, so just like outright compelling from the get-go. He speaks like more as a like generic person. That's not the term I want to use, but he's not speaking as Kendrick Lamar, I think, enough on this album.
He's speaking as Kung Fu Kenny, basically.
Sure, he puts a persona on in this album that is meant to like encompass different things, which I certainly see and certainly appreciate. But like why I've loved Kendrick in the way I have is that his raps have always been intensely personal, and he is such an incredible storyteller, like unparalleled in that regard in the entire history of the genre, I think, with songs like Sing About Me, I'm Dying of Thirst, and You, and like that kind of stuff. And so on Damn, tracks like Duckworth and Fear carry that kind of subject matter and storytelling, but the rest of it is just like, I hate to say it, but it's too poppy, unfortunately, for me to really rally around Damn, just in that, like, oh, it's bangers, and it goes, and there's really good bars and stuff, but that's unfortunately not what I want from a Kendrick Lamar album. To be a little more pointed with my criticisms, Kendrick Lamar should never sing, ever. I think Love and God are basically unlistenable songs. For me personally, really cannot get into either of those tracks. Rihanna rapping on here, not great.
Okay, I will understand you're not liking God or Love, because I like them, but they're obviously the worst tracks on the album. But Rihanna is fucking great. All right, and this is someone who doesn't really care for Rihanna.
Rihanna's
she's fucking great on Loyalty, dude.
Maybe it's
amazing.
Maybe it's that we had the Nerd song with Rihanna on it, which is just like holy fuck, holy shit. That's amazing, but I just doesn't do it for me, unfortunately. But yes, I was making a compliment sandwich here on Damn. So there are moments on Damn that are among the best in Kendrick's career. I already pointed out Fear. I already pointed out Duckworth. The beat switch on DNA is still like every single time I know it's coming, and it's just like Jesus Christ. The 5, 4, 3, 2, unbelievable every single time, unbelievable. I love XXX. But then there are some songs that just like don't. I also forgot Humble was on this album. Jesus Christ, like that's how long ago this feels. 2017 was a fucking year, but Humble's great. Humble's always been great. There are some songs that like I can look at on the track list, Feel, Pride, and be like, I can't remember anything notable about those songs. Really,
those songs
it's
at all.
It's a little. It's not forgettable, but it's just like. I don't really know how to. I don't really know how to describe it, but it's not.
I will say this out. It's definitely the least like. It's the least well structured of any Kendrick Lamar album. Like Good Kid, Mad City, and To Pimp a Butterfly are very carefully put together albums.
Definitely.
And this one, like I think one of my predictions for Damn before it came out was that it's basically just going to be sort of his. I don't know what I compared it to. Basically, it was just him, just kind of not necessarily having fun, but him just sort of. Not really caring so much about structure and just like I just want to make a bunch of songs, you know. I think it works well.
I think one of the issues with that is that outside of DNA, I didn't really go back to any song on the album just like by itself. If I wanted to listen to any song on the album, I kind of had to like get into the mindset of just listening to the whole album through. So I think it does have this cohesiveness as a full put together album, which I really appreciate because I think that's how music should be. I think you should be able to sit down and listen to an entire album all the way through and be satisfied with it. But again, on the other side, it's like, okay, but outside of, this one major single, what would I want to come back to just like by its own? Because on To Pimp a Butterfly, you could go back to King Kunta, you could go back to, just so many other different tracks. On this, it's like, I could listen to Element, by itself, but I don't really want to. I could listen to the U2 song by itself, but I don't really want to. It just becomes this thing where really just as a completed work, it's definitely up to par with the rest of Kendrick's discography, but just individually, if you pull out this track or this track, it doesn't really quite work as well. So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
Only Kendrick Lamar could make an album this good and have us be this critical of it. Because if any other rapper or artist put this album out, or an album this good out, we would be praising the fuck out of it. It's just that
he sets such a high level of expectations.
Exactly. And
that is really the thing. Yeah, that's a good point.
And I think also that the fact that he, with Tip and Butterfly, showed that he could, even when he set high expectations, exceed them. What really makes this album disappointing, not bad, just disappointing, is that we've already seen him able to live up to a hype of a previous album. So when he doesn't, he maybe matches it or goes slightly below, it's incredibly disappointing because you just expect him to go up and up and up instead of like start to level out a bit, which still leveled out Kendrick is still probably the best rapper today. It's just I think all of our expectations after Tip and Butterfly were just through the roof, and this album is just it's just incredible, not transcendent, maybe.
There is a certain plateau with Kendrick where he's been, in my opinion, he has been the dominant recording artist of the 2010s. Like, it's really not up to discussion. I mean, ever since Section 80 in 2011, he's just gotten better and better and better. And with Damn, it's kind of what Ethan said. It's this feeling of we know what to expect from Kenny now. We know, what he's going to bring us with, how he's going to wow us. But at a certain point, I think the wow factor is not going to wear off because he clearly puts a lot into his work. And musicianship and artistry like that is always going to be something that is going to be deeply celebrated. But on the other hand, I don't know if he's going to be able to replicate the highs of like To Pimp a Butterfly or replicate the highs of Good Kid, Mad City anymore. But then again, he always constantly proves us wrong. So we might, I might just be eating my own shit within a year's time or 2 years' time. Who knows?
Like, here's the thing. My final statement with Damn is that, like, before coming into, like, To Pimp a Butterfly, everyone was like, holy shit, how's he going to top Good Kid, Mad City? Like, that just seems impossible. And then he fucking did it, And Damn, I don't think for me, like, once I listened to it, like, once or twice, he's not trying to top his previous work. He's just like, I'm Kendrick Lamar, this is where I'm at right now, and, here's a peek into my mind, basically, for, however long. And I think, again, I love this album a lot. Like, I think I like it more than I guess most of y'all, because if I have any criticism, it's mainly just nitpicks. Like, yeah, there's some tracks here that maybe are going a little too hard on the mainstream friendly stuff, but at the same time, yeah, just some of the best songs of his career. And I think the album's like it flows incredibly well. And
no, I come off negative on this album. I think it was my sixth favorite album of the year, though. Yeah. I think again the only reason I'm coming off as negative is that To Pimp a Butterfly is one of my favorite albums of all time. Like, that was, and what it did, especially instrumentally, was so different than what anyone else is doing right now, and that especially the instrumentals on Damn are very good, but they sound like they sound like they're from 2017. They sound of the time. It doesn't sound timeless in the way that To Pimp a Butterfly kind of combined so much between jazz, funk, and other production styles, that this feels more just
It's kind of again, it's like we know what to expect now.
Yeah, I lost my train of thought, but yeah, that's basically what I'm trying to say.
I guess two things before we wrap up. One, I will say, like, I don't mind that it doesn't have that timeless sound, because I do think there's some times where it's good to have albums that just sort of feel like a document of the time. And I feel like for this, I think it's a very good document of 2017, yes. Or really, the 2016. I think it's a good document of, like, this is the sound of the year, I think here's the thing with Kendrick. I think he's someone who's just going to consistently be putting out great albums from, like, I have to wonder, like, when is this hot streak going to end? Like, is it ever going to end? Like, is he ever going to make a bad album?
I just don't think it's going to happen. Lamar, yeah.
If you think about it, like, Kanye kind of had that streak of, and then we can debate about Life of Pablo all day, but I think that album is definitely inconsistent, to say the least.
Ethan just gave me the idea of Kendrick Lamar's The Life of Pablo, which I'm genuinely unsure if I would ever want to hear, because, like, holy shit.
Don't like, simultaneously that thought is, like, making me, like, just a sense of complete dread, but also nut at the same time.
But I think it's good in a way, that we're like, okay, this album is not transcendent, it's just very, very good, in that now our expectations are set more realistically. So instead of putting out two masterpieces in a row, where we can be like, okay, whatever comes next,
it's just gonna be a great album.
Yeah, we don't have that expectation anymore. Mm-hmm. That he's just going to continually put out masterpieces, which is absurd to think. No one can do that.
No.
So I think it's just the next album, I think I'll be much more positive on, even if it's worse, just because my expectations have been changed. And I think that's healthy. I think my expectations were just absurd.
Yeah. Also, and the last thing I was going to mention, did anyone actually listen to this album backwards?
I did today.
The collector's edition?
I did it today.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work at all. I wanted to bring it up. I didn't want to disrail this discussion, but I did want to bring up the perception that maybe memes ruined this album a little bit too much, because, like, Damn was heavily memed and Reddit conspiracy theoried into the fucking ground with the whole, like, build up to it, launch, Coachella performance, and then the theories of, like, a double album, like, kind of making this album unlistenable for a hot second, of people being like, well, wait, where's the second half, and all of this stuff, and if you play it, and then that went right into, if you play it backwards, like, there's a true meaning to it. And I don't know why Kendrick indulged that meme really all that much, because, like, from the immediate get-go, it doesn't work, of the transition directly into DNA. Like, when that doesn't work, it's not that the album falls apart, but the album is just inherently less interesting, because that's such a cool moment, and that's gone. And there are no good transitions on the back half. And I mean, like, outside of the sound effects that are planted there, I don't think it's as much as, like, you listen to this album backwards, but, like, there are some sound effects and some moments that could have been plucked and restructured to, like, more like a director's cut than, like, literally just reversing the track list. That would have been interesting. I would have been interested to hear that, but in the way that it is lazily just restructured is, like, bad and objectively does not work. Are my thoughts on that.
Like, the thing is, it's just, if he actually did put the effort in and, like, trying to make it work backwards, like, actually, like, kind of messing with the production a bit more, making it, like, transition a bit smoother, like, it could have worked, but it's just, like, it objectively, I agree, does not work. Although the fact that he even said that the fact that he put it out damn quick is kind of, it's fucking hilarious, but also just shows the level that Kendrick is on right now. Is that he can release an album backwards, or release a newer version of his album backwards, and it's like, okay, he's just gonna do that. All right, cool, he can do it because he's Kendrick. Like, he can just do that, and no one's gonna give him shit for it because he's just fucking Kendrick. He can do whatever the hell he wants. So yeah, that's all I gotta say about Damn. It's a fucking great album. It's definitely not at the level that Good Kid, Mad City and To Pimp a Butterfly are, but it's not trying to be. It's just trying to be a great album, and I saw it for what it was, and I really fucking enjoy it. So, number 4, Kendrick Lamar, Damn. And I'm gonna keep on talking, because we're at number 3, and I'm leading the discussion on this one. Our number 3 on our top 10, and one I'm actually surprised is this high up, but I'm very happy to say that it's very high up, is Sandy Alex G, Rocket. And the boy Sandy Alex G, born Alex Gian Scully, probably said that wrong, but whatever. What are you gonna do?
Sandy Man.
The Sandy Man, Alex G. He's been at it for many, many years on Bandcamp. Was putting out albums on Bandcamp back in the early 2010s. Eventually got signed to Domino. Put out Beach Music on there back in 2015, and then last year, 2017. The Sirens, man, they're trying to stop me from talking about the Sandy Man.
It's the bad take alert.
They're trying to tell me to stop talking about the Sandy Man, but I'm going to keep talking about the Sandy Man because he put out an album this year last year, because fucking hell, we're recording this towards the end of January. This is
Don't lift the curtain.
Anyways, put out Rocket a few months ago. That is accurate. A few months ago, put out Rocket, and it's a damn fine album. It's damn fucking good. I'm going to start off and saying, yeah, like I said, it's a damn fine album. And leading up to the release of the album, I was incredibly excited for it, as almost all the singles were fucking knockouts, and they were all very different sounding too. Like, I think you released Witch, and I think it was Witch and Bobby at the same time. I want to say it was either Witch. It might have been Witch and Proud at the same time, and both were very radically different. Where Proud is this sort of kind of country-esque folk, country-esque sort of a little bit of Randy Newman in there too, track where it's just sort of this kind of fun sing along a little bit, but also dealing with kind of sort of a heavy subject of early fatherhood. Even though Alex is not a father, it's more of just kind of like a folk tale in a way. And then Witch was this sort of just really intriguing kind of intriguing art rock track that had a little teeny bit of a shoegaze structure. And I was like, okay, this is going to be on the same album. All right. Wonder how he's going to do it. And then, releases like Sports Star and Brick. And you're like, how the fuck is he going to fit this into the same album? Like, how is this even going to work? And yet, here we are. This album works very well. It's got a lot of different sounds to it, but they all flow together really well when they shouldn't. This transition from Brick into Sports Star, it's just it shouldn't work because
so good.
They're polar opposites, but yet it works because of that juxtaposition of going from this really heavy kind of Death Grip, show me the body type energy, you're like in a DIY punk show basically for this moment, and then this really kind of introspective auto-tune piano track that could have easily fit on Blonde, and the juxtaposition, it works so well somehow. As anyone else tries doing this, it's just they're going to fail spectacularly, but because of the mood and the vibe that he had built throughout the entire album, starting with Poison Root, it works and it really fits, I would say this album, it's sort of it's funny how talking about another album that was not even close to making our list, Drake More Life, it was marketed as
more
a playlist.
More tune for your head top.
It was marketed as a playlist, and I would say Rocket is kind of similar in that it definitely feels like it's like a playlist of his own songs that sort of have this loose structure that only really works in that kind of only really makes sense in Alex G's head, but it still works for us. But there's just a certain level of understanding. I feel like there's a surprising amount of mystery to this album. It's very cryptic at times with what he's talking about, but yet you still find a lot of ways to relate to what he's talking about, and find the emotion is still there in these stories, even if you can't kind of piece together what they're about or if they're even real. Talking about Proud, it's is this track based on a real thing, or is it more of just sort of a story he's kind of made up for this album that's still kind of cryptic? You're talking about having to take care of a young child and wanting to make it. But the emotion is still there. It's an emotion that you can kind of grab onto and really relate to, and that's what this album does super, super well. Is that emotionally throughout the entire album, I'm never not hooked. Once I start this album, it's just okay, I'm hooked in what he's talking about. I'm hooked in the emotions. I'm hooked in the mood that he's presenting, and it's a really captivating album. That there isn't really been an album. There wasn't really any albums that sort of sounded like Rocket, at least Rocket in its entirety, in 2017. So, but I'm going to open up discussion. Anyone else wants to give their fucking hot takes on this album?
Yeah,
now is the time.
I think my tweet immediately after listening to this album for the first time was like, Rocket sounds like if Sufjan Stevens, Bruce Springsteen, and Car Seat Headrest were all recording a song at the exact same time, and I fucking love it. And while that's like initially a horny pop-up ad on the Indieheads subreddit, it like is still very true. And I mean, like, Rocket remained one of my favorite albums throughout the entire year. I can't remember exactly where it ended up on my personal list, but definitely one of my favorite projects from last year. And I think the thing that makes it so good is like that unpredictability and that like weird manner of just like, you cannot describe in some moments what is going on in this album. It jumps all over the place, which you've definitely pointed out. One thing that I really like about it, Matty and I were actually talking about this yesterday, how kind of like early Animal Collective stuff, like the vocals maybe don't sound good on their own, but it's the instrumentation underneath them that makes them so interesting and so exciting to listen to, because you genuinely have no idea like what is going to happen next. I think this album does get a lot of comparison to Sung Tongs in that regard, and I think a lot of that's earned. Like Poison Root is very Green Text Arrow, Animal Collective, basically. I do want to shout out Alex's, not Alex G, friend of the podcast, Alex's write-up on the sub, because I think that was a really good perspective on what makes this album so interesting, in being that a lot of it is so detached personally and so ambiguous in its subject matter, but also like so universally relatable. Like, this album is about a relationship or a series of relationships or a turmoil that isn't clearly defined, but is very like just rooted in some kind of universal theme. And it doesn't give you an inch of, what to think about. The album cover is just like a fucking goat staring you in the face. There isn't really like a thesis statement or a central theme that the album asks you to consider, but it still manages to feel consistent across all of those genres, all of those forms of presentation, all of the weird interludes and diatribes. But then it also has those really, really sweet and saccharine moments like Proud and Big Fish and Powerful Man that are basically folk ballads, but are still just so compelling and so interesting and so good. Those are like my favorite moments on the album, just personally, because that's the kind of music I enjoy. But the whole journey, the whole odyssey, is so fascinating to watch happen. Definitely one of the best albums of the year. I think it is more than deserving of our number 3 spot on this list.
Yeah, I echo everything that has been said. I've been a fan of his since DSU kind of broke through a bit to a wider audience. He was definitely, the previous two kind of been popular among a Bandcamp audience, but I didn't really hear him until DSU. And I have a really bad habit of listening to singles and not listening to full albums. So this was actually my first full Alex G album, and I only listened to it like a couple weeks ago because I just forgotten to listen to the album, which is a really bad thing. And immediately, of course, I loved it. It's such an immediate album. It wears its heart on its sleeve, even though it is very cryptic. And lyrically, musically, it's just very clear in what it's trying to do. Just this barrage of different sounds, from noise rock to folky pop songs. Bobby has been stuck in my head since I've listened to the single way back whenever it came out. That's such a fucking good song. Just his vocals are so catchy, and the melody. I don't have much to say that hasn't already been said, but yeah, he's just just in terms of like where guitar rock is in 2017. I always hate when people talk about quote unquote guitar rock.
Guitar music is dead, man. It's dead, man.
Did you know that music used to be made with real instruments?
Now it's all just button presses and computers. It's all bullshit, man. It's Alex G didn't use one computer, I'm sure, in this whole album. No, but in terms of like where indie, quote unquote indie rock is, Alex G just continues to show that what it's capable of. Even if he's not doing anything like revolutionary, sonically, he just makes a fucking good song. And every album, just his songwriting ability just increases. It just his sense of melody and sense of tune is just so incredible. I could just and just we were talking about how Kendrick was kind of like, it's like diminishing returns at a certain point. That's a bit harsh, but you get what I'm saying. Alex G just seems like everything is just he can't do worse than his last project. His sense of song is just so strong, and it builds each time he makes a new song. That he's just gonna be making some of the best indie rock forever, and it's just gonna continue, and he's gonna put out a great album every 2-3 years, and I'm there for it, and I'm gonna actually start fucking listening to the whole things when they come out instead of waiting the year. Oh, I hate when I do that. That it was like 16 or something on my list, but it would definitely be higher if I had listened to it earlier. It was just this dumbass thing I do, because the singles are so good. Brick and Bobby, especially for me, and Sports Star, of course, is great. But when it comes together, it's just something completely different and much more special. That's another thing he does so well is he's so good at the single, but he's so just but then he can also connect them so well. It's just this. Not reinventing the wheel, just polishing the wheel. That's a terrible metaphor.
I agree. It's not, it's not making anything like brand new. Obviously, he's going over, already sort of explored territory, but he's finding these little secrets, these little things that people, these little tiny little things that people missed out on. It's going through explored territory, but he's taking his own path through the territory. That I think is really interesting.
What I love about Alex G is that every Alex G song, even though it's so wildly different, you're like, this is an Alex G song, of course. He just has that character built into all of his tracks, even if it's a synth song, or if it's a noise rock song, or it's a folk song. Like, you just know immediately that it's him somehow. And that I think he has such a strong sense of self, and that just keeps building with every release he does.
Mm. And there's some little tiny things I want to talk about this album. The violin playing on this album, it's fucking incredible.
Gorgeous.
The violin sounds great throughout, which is done, I think Molly Lewis does it. I want to just check that really quick. Who, I think that it's kind of funny that, that he just sort of, actually, is it Molly Lewis? I don't think it's Molly Lewis. I'm gonna try to research it, really,
you talk,
really
I'll
quick.
research.
Okay. But yeah, the violin playing is just fucking incredible. It's actually funny that Alex hired her to do work on the album, and then they just start dating throughout it. And she's been on a couple of the live sets too, and just it adds so much more dimension to some of the songs that don't have violin.
She's incredible in the live performance, and I mean the whole touring band actually is just stellar. If you can see Alex G anytime soon, you absolutely should, because that performance is going to be something as unpredictable and as boldly interesting as this entire album is.
It was Molly Germer.
Okay, Molly Germer, thank you. I know, the one that Pitchfork had back in September that I think you went to, AJ, where Alex broke Oh, you weren't at that show?
Oh, no, that wasn't the one in September. But I was at the show where Alex broke his string. Yeah, that was in New York.
He broke the strings on the guitar, and then while he's trying to fix the string, the band just starts playing "You've Got a Friend in Me" 3 times in a row. Just fucking incredible. But
shouts out to also the drummer who I ran into at a record store in Williamsburg last weekend. I recognize this guy, but I don't know who he is.
Fucking hell!
He gave me a quick nod and said "nice hat" because I was wearing my Sub Pop hat, and I was like, "Fuck, I know that guy."
But yeah, I really hope he puts out a live album. I would love to hear a live album.
Oh, that would be so cool. Or
just because
those sets recorded, yeah.
Yeah, because there's so much dimension to this. Sports Star, there's no auto-tune, but still the it's got a bit more of a drive to it, and you have the violins in there that just sound fucking amazing. Or then in like Judge, where Judge the synths are replaced with like that guitar line that just fucking shreds. He doesn't always hit it because there's sometimes he misses like a note or two, but still like generally it fucking shreds. And Judge, by the way, Judge is low key my favorite track on the album. I would say my favorite non-single on the album. Like I think there's a reason he kind of uses it to start off his set because it's so good. It's a great way to like kind of transition to like the second half of the album. But yeah, it's fucking incredible, dude. It's goddamn incredible. Super excited to see what he does after this.
There was a timeline.
Talented.
There was a timeline where this was my favorite album of the year, and I did actually fight a little bit for it to be higher on this list, even. But that's okay.
Also, I saw that Emily Yasina, I think that's how you pronounce her last name, did the backing vocals on Bobby, and those are so good.
Oh God, it's so good.
I mean, we could say that about any track. It is just an incredibly and meticulously put together album.
Yeah, and the fact that it's mainly like himself doing it too, generally when it comes to instrumentation, it just adds more layers. So like, God, how does he fucking do it? Like, how does he goddamn get this shit in his head and like is able to execute it so well? Because this is probably like the first time he did where there's like a bit more collaborators than usual. You know, he had Molly Grimmer doing violin stuff. He had some of his band members, his touring band members, doing some stuff on the album. But for the most part, it's mainly just him, like recording stuff like on his laptop and then sending it off to like a professional mixer to get it work, basically to make it sound like clean. And yeah, it's just again fucking incredible album. Hopefully I'll see him live next year because I missed him last year and I regret it like every single day. But yeah, Alex G, Rocket, number 3 on our album of the year list, and number 2, AJ.
Oh
let
man,
you take this one.
The time has come, hasn't it? What can be said? They said that indie rock was dead. They said that the emo and synth pop space was a space dominated by white males producing mediocre music. But we have in this year witnessed one of the most legendary repeats of all time, following up the objectively best album released in 2016 across all countries, across all nations. The only unifier that we have as a species, the masterpiece of Psychopomp by Japanese Breakfast. Not satisfied to just release the greatest album of all time in 2016, Michelle Zauner and company also released the best album of all time in 2017 with Soft Sounds from Another Planet. I really don't know what can be said. There was nothing last year that made me happier than watching Japanese Breakfast rightfully ascend to the throne of Queen of Indie. I mean, if you want to talk about just, how to follow up a breakthrough record like Psychopomp, I mean, 2017 was the fucking year of Japanese Breakfast with incredible music videos, incredible artist profiles, a fucking video game, non-stop touring with fucking Slowdive, not to mention it, and then also, releasing this incredible album that took everything that made Psychopomp so great, just extended it to the highest fashion, and it is simply mind-blowing. I genuinely cannot wait for what is next, and we have, another masterpiece on our hands here, folks. It is Soft Sounds from Another Planet by Japanese Breakfast. I really don't know what can be said. The instrumentation, so interesting across the entire thing. From the second Diving Woman starts, you're just like, we are fucking in for this. We are in for a trip here with this one. An almost 7-minute long track from Japanese Breakfast is just incredible. You get that little bit of the shoegaze influence in there. You're like, am I listening to Beach House with a little more teeth to it? I don't even know. But then you get into Roadhead, one of the most impressive singles of last year, coupled with, Boyish, The Body is a Blade, Machinist. Incredible stuff. I mean, this album is immaculate. So much different from Psychopomp, but also so similar, and really just cements that Japanese Breakfast is one of the best artists currently working right now. We had an extensive discussion about this on our podcast beforehand, but there's really so much interesting going on here. I'm curious to get some of the outsiders who maybe weren't converted immediately to the Church of Psychopomp, their perspectives on Soft Sounds from Another Planet.
Yeah, so AJ, a few hours ago I was driving down some dark gravel country roads.
That's right. That's fucking right. you know what is up.
No, but in all seriousness, I did not like Psychopomp a whole lot. I was not converted the first time around, and I really thought that it was overhyped. It was decent, but it wasn't. It kind of sounded like your very basic, dime a dozen Bandcamp lo-fi indie pop album. And then I got to Soft Sounds, and I clicked with it pretty much immediately. It was just a really incredible to hear Michelle go from Psychopomp to Soft Sounds. Just the change in the level of production really was astounding. She cleaned it all up. She just pushed it farther than I ever actually expected her to do. And it's just an incredible fucking album.
Yeah, it's I was not as quite on board the Psychopop train as AJ and Jeremiah and other folks in the podcast. I still liked it a lot, but wasn't quite on the train. But Soft Sounds is like in a lot of ways just a giant step up in almost every single category. And my quick anecdote about this album, it sounds good backwards. Like literally, like I was playing it on I have the record. And I was playing it on my record player at my old apartment before I moved a couple of months ago. Like my roommate, they decided just to put the album on backwards. I don't know why, because they like the album. They're like, oh, let's hear how it sounds backwards. It sounds good backwards. Like you could reverse this entire album, and it still sounds really good. All right, Michelle Zauner, she's on another level than anyone else right now. In a lot of ways, it's incredible.
She's also a wonderful performer live. Like, if you've not seen Japanese Breakfast live, I highly recommend it, because it really was... Her performance live, seeing her live, was kind of the nail in the coffin of, okay, I fucking love this album now.
Yeah, if Michelle Zauner, if Japanese Breakfast does not play the Pitchfork Music Festival this year, I'm gonna have AJ fly me out to New York, or I'll just fly myself out if I have a job. But AJ, he's got the money. I don't. Fly me out to New York. We're going to go down to the World Trade Center, or the new Trade Center. We're going to storm to the Pitchfork offices, and we're going to complain at them. We're going to be like, hey, you fucks.
Yeah.
Why, you fucks.
The Pitchfork media conglomerate, all eyes are on you, you cowards. Give Japanese Breakfast best new music, you fools. There's still time to repent for your sins, but not much. Not much. There's not much time. This will not stand much longer.
But there is a chance to redeem yourself if you book Japanese Breakfast for the Pitchfork Music Festival. This is all we ask. This is all we ask, okay? That's all we want. We just want to see Japanese Breakfast in Union Park in Chicago sometime in July, because we all want to fucking go crazy. Because at this point,
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm done.
I do think it does speak, though, to the state of indie when we have a social climate like one we had in 2017, to have a rising star really just based entirely on musicianship that has kind of grinded her way to this status in the indie pop, the indie rock sphere. I mean, there's someone like Michelle who is really just so incredibly friendly and approachable in person. I met her after the show that I went to in September, and she was just so warm and welcoming. And I don't know, it really speaks to the level of artistry and musicianship that is on display on this album, that you can tell she cares a lot about everything that goes into this record. She meticulously and very carefully arranges these instrumental set pieces and these ambient soundscapes, and it just draws you in, and for the 40 or so minutes that this record runs on, you're just kind of sucked into another world.
Yeah, it's just... again, as we're talking about with Rocket, Michelle Zauner, she's not exactly reinventing the wheel, but she is, shining it up really goddamn well, and really, sort of using, this pre-established template to create this really unique sound that really can only come from Japanese breakfast and in the mind of Michelle Zauner. And yeah, the sound it's a goddamn masterwork. I don't think I would say moment to moment, I don't think it has as many great moments as Psychopomp, but I will say that as an album, it does, obviously flow a lot better. It is like very more carefully put together. As obviously, Diving Woman. Here's the thing: I am a goddamn sucker. If your album does not have a great intro, I'm not going to like your album that much. Like, we'll probably discuss this on the next podcast we do. But the Porches album that just came out, the intro is terrible. It's goddamn awful, and it ruins the entire album. Like, the rest of the album is not as bad as that intro, but it just sets the bar of like, oh god, this is really bad. But Diving Woman, god, it's so fucking well done. Especially it's a shocker too, like a kind of a shocker because, Psychopomp was very, very short. Almost all the songs, I think the longest song was like just maybe close to 4 minutes long. But this, yeah, it's this 6.5, almost 7 minute long sort of epic kind of art pop shoegaze type vibe, and it works so goddamn well. And also you hear some really great shredding on the sound, like some of the guitar solo stuff is just it's so good, and it has just this really nice bounce to it, and it's so good. And then of course leads into Roadhead, and Roadhead is also just this incredible single that also is the entire album just has, for the most part, all these songs have this really great drive to them that work really, really, really well. Like, I don't think I've listened to this album in the car yet, but I'm going to probably get on that, like, stat, because it would work out, like, so well. So, yeah, I'm not the stan here, but yeah, saw Michelle live. She's fucking great live. The songs are just, there's so much more to there's a different energy to sing them live that really does, make whenever you go back to the album, you go, God, how is she so fucking good? It's just incredible. AJ?
Hello?
AJ?
Yes.
Hey.
Hi.
Okay, I've said all I need to say. Is there more we want to say about this album?
Oh yeah, I said I wanted to go off what Dylan said a little bit, a bit more seriously, in that we do drive the meme of Japanese breakfast goat so much, but it is very wonderful to have a hero of indie rock so wholesome and so pure, delivering from on high such great music. And like, if you aren't a fan of Japanese breakfast, you probably should be.
I'm sorry.
Uh-oh. Ethan's not... see,
Oh,
Ethan,
no.
Ethan is the lone wolf on this one.
I haven't listened to the album.
Buddy. Buddy! Alright, but we'll just continue. Okay,
Let's get to an album I did listen to.
Yeah, if we have, unless we have more to say. Like, I think I said it's hard to like get into some of the details just because it's just like such a great album. Although I will say, the singles, I guess I'll talk about leading up to it. The singles were at first like a little bit kind of like, oh, okay, like Machinist was a very bold single that works really goddamn well in the context of the album. Like, it is so much better in the context. Like, once you have like Diving Woman and Roadhead lead into it, like it works so well. But it was very strange at first. It's like this sort of more indie pop, auto-tune vocals, but also has like this amazing sax part that just is so goddamn good. It's like it's so fucking good. But I will say I was gonna say the second half of this album. I'm looking at the track list now. I was like, oh, the second half of the album, it's not as good. But I actually might say the opposite. The second half of the album is just fucking incredible. Like 12 Steps and The Body Is a Blade and Till Death and This House. Ugh.
The back half of this album is the only fuck me up core of 2017, lesser than the album we're about to talk about. But the back half of this album is some incredibly personal songwriting, which like should have been expected from anyone who had heard Psychopomp, but just like, different subjects matters, different presentations, and it's just incredibly wholesome songwriting.
Yeah, just straight up. It's just it's hard to say, like, it's hard to just say anything, but it's so good. But I'm excited to see where she goes next after this. I think, like, as far as I can tell, she's kind of taking a bit of a break. Like, she's writing a book right now in Japan.
The goat. I'm sorry, she's the goat.
Exactly. She's just fucking. Hey, I am a part of the hive.
Your fave could never.
Your fave could never. I'm a part of the Hive for life. All right, but it's not my top Hive. We all know my top Hive. Omelda Hive is top Hive at the moment, but Japanese Breakfast ain't far behind. Incredible album. Definitely a great follow up to Psychopomp. That sort of that in a lot of ways sort of because Psychopomp, it could have easily been a fluke, kind of a fluke album, but I think Soft Sounds really proves that hey, like she is this really great voice and this really great songwriter, and I want her to keep making music for until she dies. If she ever dies, she might be immortal for all we know. Because it wouldn't shock me.
You know what's a really good band? Little Big League. It's a solid band.
So yeah, if Jeremiah was on this podcast, he would be going off about Little Big League because he's a big Little Big League stan. So, yeah, fucking ugh. Number one though, oh boy. So quick recap: if you have a bad memory, if you have a bad memory, here's a quick recap of our top 10 so far. Number 10, King Kroll the Ooze. Number 9, Fleet Foxes Crack Up. Number 8, Sun Kill Moon, Common is Light and Love, or Red Valleys of Blood. Number 7, Lomelda Thanks. Number 6, The National, Sleep Well Beast. Number 5, Julian Baker, Turn Out the Lights. Number 4, Kendrick Lamar, Damn. Number 3, Sandy Alex G, Rocket. Number 2, Japanese Breakfast, Soft Sounds from Another Planet. And number 1, and this one's not a shocker, but number 1, Mount Eerie.
It was kind of inevitable. Really.
Yeah. Mount Eerie, Acrylic to me is our number 1 album of the year.
Of course.
It's inevitable. Like it kind of similar to our 2015 list. It was always going to be To Pimp a Butterfly no matter what. It was just that was the album, and at least for a lot of us this year, Mount Eerie, Acrylic to me was the album of 2017. There wasn't really any other choice for what our album of the year could have been.
I campaigned very hard for a Cut to the Feeling single.
Very similar to our actual song of the year, or no, I guess it wasn't. Very similar to Ravens, which I'm sure is the one you're referencing.
What? Sorry.
I was saying that I think like Ravens was our song of the year,
yes.
And Cut to the Feeling, very, very similar tracks.
Oh yes. I was actually hoping that Cut to the Feeling would be our album of the year, not just single of the year. But some things don't work out. You win some, you lose some.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, Acrylic to me, boy.
It's,
we discussed this on the podcast awards a little bit. AJ kind of went in, but yeah, this it's an incredibly tough album to talk about. But I guess the backstory, which if you probably already know, but just very quick recap. Phil Elverum, very well known artist, doing music under the name Mount Eerie, and previously before that, The Microphones, has been putting out albums for many, many years, and working collaboratively with his wife Genevieve. But sometime in 2015, his wife was diagnosed with a pancreatic cancer, and in less than a year than the diagnosis, passed away after battling with cancer. And the album is sort of essentially the aftermath of Phil kind of trying to sort of make sense of and kind of trying to survive, I guess, in this aftermath of the one person that he really, really loved being taken away from him. And yeah, this it is there is no holds barred. There's no metaphors about death or anything like that. It's very to the point and it's very brutal. And you hear a lot of people say that this album is very difficult to listen to, and they're not wrong. It's hard to just put this album on because it's tough. Like I know, I think I said in the past that it takes you have to kind of let it sit with you. Like once you get to a certain point in the album, you're just hooked. Like you're sort of in a state of shock, and you can't really turn the album off. You kind of just have to sit through the rest of it. And yeah, I will say no album really made me cry like this album did this year. Although Lomelda Thanks is like my own personal album of the year. This album, there's a visceral emotion to it that, because there's never really been an album about death written the way this is, where it's just a very brutal sort of stream of consciousness approach. It's very similar to Sun Kill Moon and what he did on Benji, and then later albums where it's very to the point, no grand metaphors. It's very wordy. It's just like it's sometimes too personal. well, it seems like we're being, we shouldn't be listening to this album. It feels like it's a very like secret, private document of grief that you feel weird listening to, and at times like kind of enjoying. So, I'm gonna let someone else take it from here. It's just we can talk about some of the individual songs.
If you don't mind, I'll take it from here. This is my album of the year. Personally, I've been a Mount Eerie fan or Microphones fan for a couple of years now, kind of a late comer to his stuff, but absolutely deep dived and have become a huge fan. And obviously, this is nothing like anything he's done before. No dense layering, no crazy songs. It's just him and his guitar, and it's fucking devastating. I remember when I heard the first single, I cried. I am crying thinking about it right now. My eyes are literally tearing up thinking about the song. That's how intense it is. It's just it's so bizarre when you think about what generally we like about music. We like layers, we like density, we like metaphors. This is none of that. It's the exact opposite. It's so empty. It's barely there, but that's why it's so powerful. It's just raw. There's no. I always think about what makes good art, like why we make art, why do we have this inclination? Because it doesn't make that much sense from like a survival, like purely scientific view. But I think what my kind of conclusion that I've come up with recently that could change any minute is that we do it to explain the unexplainable. These basic things we call sadness, happiness, these emotions we can't truly put into words. It just needs to be expressed through art, and I think the better the art, the better it is at conveying that emotion. And usually that is done through complexity, and mastery of art is to convey this emotion. But Phil obviously has shown that he can do that with The Glow Part 2 and the other projects that have been just incredible. But he does the exact opposite here, and just instead of using all that complexity, he just says, "Here's the emotion. Come and take it, or not take it. Come and feel it." And there's really nothing else like it that I can think of in existence. Truly, it's just so plain spoken, so in your face. There nothing between you and Phil. Just he's basically talking to you, and it's so bizarre that to me that the best album of the year, I think by far, is an album that does nothing of what we generally consider to be important or what makes an album so good. But it just because instead of doing the complexity to create these emotions, he just conveys the emotions directly, as direct as you can. And man, yeah, it's and you feel. The only reason you feel like you can listen to this album is because he released it. It feels like I would, like I think when I listen, that the fact that he released it means that it made him feel better releasing it. I do truly think that. But man, this album, listening to this album, you're like, should I be listening to this? This is this stranger is bearing their soul to me. And obviously, I don't think he, like I said, I don't think he would have released it if he didn't, but you still have that question always on your mind, despite that. Yeah, there's so much that can be said about this album, and there has been so much said, which, thank God, because this album deserves all the praise it's gotten. But yeah, there's nothing quite like it, and I don't know if there ever again will be something quite like it. Because instead of all the complexity and that he usually uses to convey emotion, he just is like, fuck it. That's not what I need right now.
Mm-hmm.
I just sneezed off my... yeah. And AJ and I got the chance to see him. I think, Matty, you also...
I saw him with Jake in Chicago.
I don't think Dylan, you got a chance to see him, but...
I did not. He did not come to Texas, as far as I know.
It's a incredible experience. Not a joyous one. Not a fun time. It's not a It's not a concert. It's almost just a story. It's like the purest form of storytelling. And also, I highly recommend listening to his interview with Mark Maron, just to get a bit more context and hear him talk about the album. And also just to hear him as a person, because I feel like it's easy to mythologize him as this guy who went through this terrible tragedy and is suffering. And that's his only identity. And it has become a bit his thing because it's terrible and all-consuming. But just listening to that podcast, you're like, oh, he's a human being. And this album, I think, just... it kind of... when you're listening to it so too much, you can kind of get caught up in this mythology of him, and I think listening to that interview can kind of regain that this is just a human being going through one of the most horrible things you can go through. And yeah, I've rambled on about this album enough. Someone else take over.
Yeah, so I left this off of my personal top 50 because to me it felt wrong to include this album in a ranking format at all, and like it would be like if it wasn't number one, I felt like it would be disingenuous to put it anywhere on there, because to me, and I think like this is a thing that I think a lot of people share as well, but it just feels like weird to like look at this in any context of how we typically talk about music or even art in general. But like, yeah, like the second this album existed, it was kind of like it didn't belong to 2017 anymore. It didn't even belong in the Mount Eerie discography. It is very much just like a self-contained work that exists in such a fascinating and like devastating fashion that it has to exist. I think like it goes without saying that none of us get any joy from listening to this album. It's really something that I don't interact with or engage with that much. I did talk about it on the other podcast, but Ravens is, for me, like this album in a microcosm. I like get that same emotional impact from Ravens, and it's in a more digestible fashion. I think that was my favorite song of last year. I have no incredible experience in and of itself. This album as a whole is just so hard to process. I did like listen to it earlier today because I wanted to come at it from a fresh perspective, and just like every listen of this album reveals something else that's super devastating and just like super interesting as this story has progressed. Like it is an unparalleled look into an artist's mind with regards to Phil and his entire experience. I'm glad that he is following it up this year, but like, yeah, the line that really got to me today was on Seaweed, where he talks about something he couldn't remember, and then the line was like, "You did most of my remembering for me," is just a like fascinating way to think about the whole situation, and just like it feels like such an easy statement to make, but is also just like so hard to have conjured in that fashion of writing lyrics. And moments like that are that is all this album is literally moments like that. I think there's like every single line could be relatable and devastating to every single person who listens to it for a completely different reason. but it is also so singularly Phil's experience that is what is so intimidating about this album, and what makes it so unique and so, important in context, because it is like literally just context, the album. I want to talk more a little bit about what's the second album called, the one he's releasing soon.
Now I think now then
maybe. Okay, yeah. So that's the album I really am looking forward to, and I think will be like,
now only
will be more listenable and more digestible, and like a natural progression from this album, which kind of, sort of had to have happened, but will be one that I think like we can talk about more objectively as a piece of music and a piece of art, because there's distance, and even having heard some of those songs live when we saw him at that show, they are funny in a way that is like sharp and also really painful, and they don't move past any of the events of A Crow Looked at Me, but they're able to kind of like discuss them from a removed perspective. I'm glad it ended up being our album of the year, because there's really no other place to talk about it, essentially. But like, yeah, it was immediately iconic and important, and like this unforgettable piece of music. That's really all I have to say about it.
Yeah, I would be so mad if it was like number 7. That would just be like, what are we doing? That would be absurd. Like, you can't put it anywhere but number 1 and to talk about it. Truly.
Yeah, and like, I think one thing about this album is that everyone gets wrapped up in how depressing it is, but I would say it's only really depressing basically throughout this entire album, you really do feel like, God, Phil really loved this person so much, and you really feel that in every word he says, how much he loved this person, and that's one of I think one of the ways that makes the album just slightly more digestible a little bit is that it is, sort of, it's just obviously this very just like very heartbreaking, brutal, depressing document of grief, but the root of this grief is the love that he had for this person, and that basically he wrote, a whole album for her, and it's just, yeah, it's truly an incredible piece of art. And also at the same time, I think maybe not this album, but definitely the next album, it seems like it's going to be a much more, there's little hints in this album that's kind of a deconstruction of his previous work. I'm trying to remember what song it was. It might have been, it was something on the latter half, but talking about, saying that, I wrote about, conceptual emptiness, and now, I know my way around these hospitals. It's just such a brutal line that really does kind of set a lot of perspective for where Phil is, knowing that basically almost, in a way, it's kind of tragic, but also very, very understandable, that basically almost everything he made before this album, it just doesn't really have true meaning to him anymore, knowing that like now he's really kind of been through something. Like, he really had to experience something so traumatic, that it feels like his previous work just doesn't have that valid meaning. To me it does, but I understand with Phil it doesn't. And yeah, I'm very, obviously I think he played almost all the new songs live on the next album whenever I saw him. I'm definitely excited to hear them again. Well, not really excited. I don't know the proper word, but basically I want to hear them again, But yeah, Crow to me, yeah, like you guys have been saying, to reiterate, I don't think any other album could have been number 1 for this podcast this year, because it hit everybody, everyone who listened to it, it just hit everybody, and it's a very strong. It's kind of rare nowadays to have an album where we all can agree that it just really, really impacted every single person. Because there's sometimes where we have disagreements, but this is the album where I think we can all kind of objectively agree on, like, yeah, this album, it affected every single one of us to our very core. So yeah, that's all I gotta say about the album. Other than just like being completely silent and not having anything to say, just because it's weird to talk about this album. Like, I feel like I shouldn't say a single thing.
Yeah, right.
But at the same time, there's so much.
The
I
last
will say
time
that some of the like weird humor around this album, where it's like, oh hey, it's so sad. I only listened to it one time, but it's my album of the year. Like, it kind of pisses me off a little bit because it really ignores just the entire context of the whole album just for a cheap joke about how depressed you were while listening to it. And it's really, I don't know, it's really not something that should be strung up for laughs like that. It's a very hard listen, and if you've only listened to it like a handful of times, that's totally fine. But don't play it off as just, oh, it's so sad, I can't listen to it. Please give me likes. Or please,
I think that
vote this up. Like,
yeah,
I see that all the time on the internet, just in any discussion about this album or just about Phil in general now. And really, I hate that people are kind of pushing his music into this like weird, like grief porn sort of fucked up kind of stereotype. When if you even bother to actually sit down and listen and contemplate the album and absorb it, it's far deeper than that.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think, not to be like David Foster Wallace, but the current moment is so full of irony and so full of sarcasm, and I do it all the time. I do it constantly, but this so the opposite, that it's such a clean. There's almost a clean feeling to it, just because our lives are so constantly inundated by falsities and inauthenticity, that someone being this pure about what they're feeling is just so cathartic for the listener, that, and I agree with you, all these like the irony culture taking in this completely unironic, sarcastic piece of art is really just bad. I don't know how else to say it. And I think, especially in 2017, which was the year where, like, everything felt like a meme, like, and just ironic, and the whole, like, I mean, the political situation, of course, just felt, everything just felt so, like, just mean in a way, and just cruel to, it was just about being cruel to your fellow man, or person, I guess. This album just about, even though it is about this person's death, like Matty was saying, it is about love. That's what it's real. That's what it's about. It's about this love for this other person that was completely true. I think is the best way to say it. And I think why this year in particular, why it hit so heavily, is because there wasn't a lot of that. We're just, culture is so ironic and hateful so much of the time, that just something so beyond that was just so important to so many people, I think. Even if his tragedy is worse than what any of us have gone through, I think, this year, I can say that. That just everyone is able to relate to it in some way, and I think that's why it's so important.
Yeah, I don't think there's really much more to say other than, like, this is just, it's a very real, visceral album, and it's always it's as we've kind of heard with some of this stuff, it's going to be interesting seeing where he goes from here. Seeing is he gonna just is this sort of the how it's gonna be, or is this just sort of, I don't know. Yeah, we love you, Phil, and it's yeah, we love you, Phil. Hope you're doing okay, man. That's all I gotta say. It's just I'm glad to have it as our album of the year. I don't think there's anything else that could have really topped the list other than this one. Just in terms of just the what it's trying to accomplish and how well it accomplishes it. So, unless anyone else has any more thoughts, I think that'll about do it for our podcast.
Yeah, I think that's it. I don't know. Yeah, it's truly what I will the album I will remember this year by. Truly.
Yeah. So sorry to end the podcast on such a somber note, folks. But hey, do not fret. We will actually have more podcasts on the way. Hopefully at a more consistent rate. As our next podcast, already in January, there's already been there's already been a decent amount of releases so far in January. So be on the lookout for our next podcast, as we'll be kind of talking about some of them. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this podcast, and we will see you all next time. Bye. All right, I think we're good.
Oh, I have to stop it. Hold on.